So I take a few of you people have smoked some weed before? Yeah! All right, well, I'm glad to hear that because I want to talk about the past, the present, and the future and get an idea of what I'm thinking from somebody who's been around for a long time. But I first wanted to start off by mentioning my dear friends, Kevin Black and Peter McWilliams, both of whom are personal friends of mine. And this stage is honoring them, so I say, honor them with high honor. Peter McWilliams and Kevin Black, two wonderful activists. So, as far as the past is concerned, I spent a lot of time in court working to keep people out of prison. Almost every day I'm in court working on that. And so I have a very good sense. I've been doing this for 20 years plus of being an expert witness. And we're seeing a change in the way the cases are working, and we're seeing a change in the attitude around the country. But we're also seeing the fact that we're getting rollback at different parts of the world. Some of what's going on here in Washington, for example, is not exactly what people envisioned when we passed I-502 here a few years ago to legalize cannabis. It's like it wasn't supposed to affect medical marijuana, and yet look at the problems it's causing. In California, we have the legislature that's got a bill that claims to be a marijuana reform bill, but what they're going to do is take away legal defenses for pot growers who are not licensed by the state that we've had ever since 2003. And so that's just their idea of reform, is to make it so that some people will get licenses, but other people lose their legal defense. And so the other thing that we're seeing is that this whole idea of testing people's urine as a part of a condition for getting a job or to have a license, these issues are not going away. We call it the cannabigotry. It's like the Jim Crow of cannabis is what we're setting upon us right now. And so some of these things that we're seeing as we see reform are things that we also are concerned about where things are going. So when we look at the past, one of the things that's a big fear for me as we see this big change that's happening now is that the history of the struggle to get us to this moment can very well be lost, and we can't afford to let that happen. We've got people who've been sitting in prison for 20 years. We've got people who've been working as activists for decades. We've got a history of people who've worked underground, people who kept the genes pool alive, and so forth for all these decades, and we need to protect and honor that. I'm working with a group that's called the 420 Archive, and we're trying to approach this from 3 different directions. The first is to get the archives of people who've been contributors to the field of cannabis reform and preserve them. The second is to create collections and to coordinate collections of museum exhibits of material that goes from before cannabis was ever prohibited and up through the history of its prohibition, and to create that as something that we can leave for future generations. And the third thing is to get oral histories of people who've been using cannabis underground and growing underground and working in the cannabis industry underground that have never been free to tell their stories before. So those stories of the people who risked many years in prison to make sure that other people had some nice herb to smoke is not lost to history. So I hope you'll join us in looking at the 420 Archive and make sure that history is preserved. The next thing is about the now, and the now is that as cannabis moves out of its outlaw status, we have a big fear that what's going to happen is big corporations are going to come in and they're going to try to take over control of the work that our friends and our neighbors and the people who've been the growers and so forth for so long have been working for, and then patent the seed lines and stuff like that. So I'm working with a group called the Open Cannabis Project, and our plan is to try to get a final way of explaining what the different seed lines are in terms of the genetics and their effects and so forth, but also to preserve them and create the public domain record that these already exist, so that Monsanto and corporations like that can't come in and patent those seeds and make you always have to pay for it. We want to make sure that you'll always be able to grow your OG Kush and your blueberry without having to pay some corporation who comes in and buys that trademark away. So the name of that group is called the Open Cannabis Project. It's got 3 parts: to protect access to the seed lines that exist now, to protect the integrity so that when people tell you that this is a blue dream, that you know it's really a blue dream and not OG Kush, both of which are good. I'm not knocking either one, but you know, you want to know what you're getting, right? And the third thing is to get the genome mapped so that we will know for sure from here on out. Okay, and so then the next thing I wanted to say is that where we're heading toward in the future, things have shifted really dramatically. And now we have Dr. Sanjay Gupta changing his position on marijuana, which has led to this whole massive shift, which was marked last week when the New York Times came out in favor of taking marijuana out of the Federal Controlled Substance Act. And this is really hugely important. This is something we've been saying for a long time, and now finally we've got the New York Times joining us to say it. So I'm predicting that the future of cannabis is that we are going to see more and greater hempfests in the future, more and greater freedom in the future, a protection of what we've got, an expansion of our rights. And I want you all to join us, and one of the important things is that we need more people smoking herb and more people to understand it. And so I've written a book which is called The Newbie's Guide to Cannabis in the Industry. It's going to be out this year. And so if you know people who should be smoking weed or who should be in the weed business and you want to make sure they get it right and don't screw themselves and screw each other and they understand what's going on, tell them to get a copy of that book for Christmas, all right? And so then the last thing that I wanted to say is that save Hempfest! Get into your pockets and raise some money for this thing! It doesn't pay for itself! Legalization doesn't pay for itself! We need you guys to contribute, okay? It's great that you're here today, but Steve and everybody else is going to tell you, make sure that there is a Hempfest next year by contributing when the buckets come around, and don't wait for the buckets. Buy the stuff, the mementos and stuff like that. Get the things that are going to keep Hempfest going, because without Hempfest, I-502 would not have passed in Washington. We wouldn't have legalization today, and we'd all be much worse off. So please join us now with one last cheer. Give me a hemp hemp hooray! Hemp hemp hooray! Hemp hemp hooray! All right, I'll see you guys on the leafonline.com.